Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is another volume of the Cinema Chronicles right here on Nashville Movie Dispatch. I'm your host, Brandon Vick. I'm not sure if you know this, but I'm a board member of the Music City Film Critics Association, as well as a member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association. And March is coming to an end. April showers are in our future. And I've got 4 movies to tell you about. And honestly, I feel like I'm really being, I really feel like I'm finding my true purpose, because I'm going to tell you about some movies today to bring awareness to them. That's why I'm on this earth, or so my mama told me. And I'm going to say there's at least 2 movies you probably haven't heard of, and maybe 3. And one of those is actually directed by Steven Soderbergh. But I guess what everyone's been talking about so far is the March Madness. It's underway. I'm sure everyone filled out their brackets. I am just let's see. It's the last day of March, but I really think Norfolk State, I think, has a really good chance of making it to at least maybe the Sweet 16. I don't know. They were looking pretty good the other night, and that one, what is he? I think he's like 6'5" point guard, Barry Windham. He was just firing into the net the other night against the Crossville Cougars, and anyway, I was really impressed. I'm not a huge basketball fan, but I liked what I saw. So Norfolk State, I'm rooting for you. And then, of course, we had St. Patrick's Day. We really got into it this year, my wife and I. The night before, we did the whole green water in the toilet, green milk. Yeah. And then we put gold coins and stuff. We set up this little box like we're going to catch them. And we put like green handprints on around the house, and that he stole some of our shoes and put them in the sink. We went all out. We left Lucky Charms on the ground because, you know, that little bastard gets hungry as he's trying to trick him and with all this tomfoolery. But so we wake him up and we're like, oh my goodness, look. Well, because it sat in there, it actually looked blue instead of green in the toilet. But he knew something was up. He knew somebody's been in this house. But the whole time we're showing him like these different things we've done, which he really liked having to pick up all the gold coins, and he wanted to bring them to his friends at school. But he was really cool about some little creature man breaking into our house and leaving fun stuff. But what I did, and I thought this was I didn't know how this was going to be received, but I think he liked it, is I had an old wrestling buddy. I don't know if anybody remembers those, but they were basically these like these pillows, but they were shaped in, like, I think they'd done like Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Big Boss Man, Legion of Doom. They had some of those. We all, you could sleep on them, you could slam them, but I cut off one of their heads and put a leprechaun hat on it and put it on the broomstick. Like, I caught him and he's dead. And I put that in the garage and was like, hey, you see all this stuff that happened? Dad caught him. Now look. Anyway, my wife and son left for school crying. But damn, it felt like a Braveheart moment. Felt like I really got the point across. So the good news is, all the trouble that my wife and I went through the night before, we won't have to do it again. We killed that son of a bitch. His head was on my broomstick. And then I swept the kitchen floor with his head. So I hope you guys had fun on St. Patrick's Day, whatever you decided to do. That happened all between 5:55 and 6:35 in the morning. So we didn't do a damn thing for the rest of the day, because honestly, how do you top that? How do you top that? So Let's get into it. Let's start some movie talk, shall we? First up is Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's Little Boy Don't Feel Nothing. Next. Novocaine is the name. And first of all, I got a chance to see this at an early screening along with some other fine folk. And it was actually in the 40X theater. Now, I don't know if anybody out there knows what this is or has ever been to it, but this has been my first time. And it is basically like one of those rides at like Disney World where the seats move, it blows air, it has mist, it has smoke. I think I got some blood on me. I don't know if that was even part of it or if that was just someone else that was near me. But I mean, it's a whole immersive type viewing. Any way to get people into the theater. And I will say a lot of this stuff is like, oh, it's gimmicky where, it's not quite like, oh, filmed in IMAX, because that's pretty cool. But sometimes, especially I think for action movies, I think a screening, a theater like 40X kind of adds more to it. I will say I enjoyed it. It was a hell of a ride. It jerks you around. It jerks you off. It does all kinds of stuff. And I do think tickets are like 20-something bucks. I highly recommend at least doing it once to probably to something like a movie like Novocaine, an action movie. I probably wouldn't let it be more than 2 hours. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't do any of that. It's a wild ride. I tweeted, watching a movie in 40X is like being in a car wreck, but fun. I'm in a neck brace and lost one of my shoes. So it sounds like you're getting beat up, and it does feel like that. And there was times where, honest to God, it felt like you're on a roller coaster. But I will say it was, in the end, pretty cool. And as you'll find out as I get to the end of this, I think I gave this movie a higher rating than it deserves because of 40X. But let's get to what Novocaine is about. When the girl of his dreams is kidnapped, every man, Nate, who is Jack Quaid, turns his inability to feel pain into an unexpected strength in his fight to get her back. That was per Rotten Tomatoes. And Novocaine it's a crazy, chaotic action rom-com where the two directors, Dan Burke and Robert Olson, are having a blast piling on the pain that's sure to make audiences incessantly wince. If you want to see a third-degree fried hand, you got it. You want to see some fingernails being ripped off, you got it. You want to see bones literally get snapped and ripped through the skin, you got it. Now the romance part is cute. And there's great chemistry between Jack Quaid and Amber Midthunder. And if you don't know who she is, she starred in Prey, one of the Hulu movie, the Predator movie. They're both real. I really like them both. But the violence, as you can probably tell, is off the charts. It's a brutal, bone-breaking bloodbath that's energetic and hilarious. The action, as far as like the action scenes, I think they were pretty good, but it's the kills that really deliver. I won't ruin it for anybody in case you haven't seen it yet, and from what it made in its opening weekend of $8 million, I don't know how many people actually saw it, but I'm going to save the kills for when you see it. That, to me, the action is cool. Again, if you're thinking like John Wick and all this, no, that's too high of a bar. But the kills were pretty fantastic. I had read, and I read this more than once, where some see Novocaine as this one-note joke which is basically kind of using his as feeling no pain to kind of just let that be it. But and perhaps so. However, I will say it at least puts it to some good and gnarly use. Now, I'd say the last 15 minutes or so, it drags a bit, and Burke and Olsen, the directors, they do keep you occupied by not taking anything too seriously while we are rooting for our ill-starred Chevalier in his persistent pursuit to rescue the girl of his dreams from a sadistic Ray Nicholson. Yes, that's Jack's kid, who is a scene stealer here. Quaid is his, if you're familiar, obviously, with The Boys, I think that's kind of, he was pretty good in Companion that came out in January. But he's his usual lanky, goofy, charming self. And in no way would this be nearly as much fun as it is without him. He is as Variety's review by Peter Dubridge put it, is the world's unlikeliest John Wick. But what a thrill it is to see if he bites his tongue clean off. There are a few scenes, and you are just waiting and waiting, because the whole thing is he doesn't really eat foods, because if he did, he wouldn't know it if he bit his tongue or bit his lip or anything. And I tell you what, anytime he is chewing on a piece of food, I'm just like, I'm about to see blood gush out of his mouth. I'm not going to ruin it for you. You'll just have to wait and find out. But so I'm giving Novocaine a Vick's Flicks rating of 3.5 out of 5 stars. It probably is more of a 3, but the 4DX experience, it works in its favor. If you see it in 4DX, I think you'll have a pretty good time with it. So I'm letting it roll. I'm going with 3.5 out of 5. And coming up next is a foreign film about a guy coming back to his hometown, and my God, is he thirsty! Misericordia is the name, which means mercy, which everyone in this film receives, even when they may not deserve it. Per Rotten Tomatoes, set in an autumnal woodsy village in his native region of Occitanie, the latest film from the director Alain Girardi, follows the meandering exploits of Jeremy, played by Felix Keisel, an out-of-work baker who has drifted back to his hometown after the death of his beloved former boss, a bakery owner. Staying long after the funeral, the seemingly benign Jeremy begins to casually insinuate himself into his mentor's family, including his kind-hearted widow and venomously angry son, while making an increasingly surprising and ultimately beneficial friendship with an oddly cheerful local priest. So, this is a piece, an article by IndieWire called Stranger by the Lake director Alain Girardi must see Misericordia, set for March U.S. release. So within that, it says, if you've never known what it's like to be the only hot person in a small town, Misericordia is here to show you just that in all its darkly comic anguish. As the director told IndieWire back at Cannes in 2024, this is his first film without an explicit lovemaking scene in a long time. That's certainly something from the director of 2013 Stranger by the Lake, where an affair between a handsome sullen cruiser and a mustachioed potential killer turned into one of the sexiest, deadliest, and most explicit films of the 21st century so far. I don't know about you guys, but I think I need to check out Stranger by the Lake. My britches are getting tight. Like Stranger by the Lake, Gerardi relies on, I guarantee this is probably not how you say his name, but just go with me here, folks. Relies on his Hitchcockian arsenal of moral ambiguity and quick-witted cuts surrounding a queer man's destructive presence. He says, at the age of 60, well, I'm not quite 60, but nearly, I'd like to say that this film was sort of made on the strength of what I would call teenage fantasies. The idea of falling in love with the mother of one's best friend or the father of one's best friend, you have this whole image of desire and eroticism as it is linked to religion based from childhood or teenagehood. So, to me, this felt like two different films playing tag as elegantly as possible. And I liked the beginning of the Hollywood Reporter's review, describes it quite well. It's written by Jordan Mintzer. It says, revisiting the murder mysteries of his award-winning 2003 feature Stranger by the Lake, but with a more darkly comic tone found in much of his other work. French writer-director Girardi's latest plays like two films at once. The first is a sinister small-town homicide story in the vein of Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt, in which a man shows up to wreak havoc on the seemingly innocent. The second is a twisted variation on, and I have not watched this either, of Pasolini's Terima, in which a family is torn apart by a visitor's pervasive sexuality and refusal to leave them alone. He goes on to say the two movies don't always crystallize into one, and if you're looking for a credible crime thriller in which everyone behaves logically, Misericordia may not be for you, which it wouldn't be. If, on the other hand, you're looking for an exploration of repressed sexual desire and religious hypocrisy in backwoods France, the strange and sober new film does the trick. So, I after watching it, this to me is a psychosexual drama that puts us, the audience, in a constant state of feeling uncomfortable and isolated with its tone and setting. The static pacing can take its toll at times. It slows down any of the allure that the writer-director is whipping up. He does walk a fine line between subversion and normality, and he missteps every now and then. Nevertheless, the film is haunting and absurd in its examination of desire, faith, repression, and guilt. As our sympathies are being toyed with, the fundamental question of the film remains, who are we to judge others for their known or unknown yearning for another? Felix Keisel, who is the star of the film, is stellar as the enigmatic, complex Jeremy, who isn't the most trustworthy, yet manages to get our empathy anyways. Jacques Develle is perhaps the second most intriguing behind Felix, playing an eccentric priest who's admittedly inappropriate with a dose of deadpan humor, but is also a walking example of the title of the film, Misericordia. There's a touching scene between him and Jeremy involving the murder that ends up kind of sprawling into this kind of deeper meaning that of dealing with guilt and the deserving of punishment, but that none of that is ever going to bring the person back, and what good does it do to rot in jail? I think Jeremy really is kind of the, he did an awful thing, but he's not necessarily an awful person. But do keep in mind the priest does have an ulterior motive in keeping Jeremy around. But there is some truth in their conversation that shows what the gift of mercy can do and the power that it provides in giving us this sense of peace. I will say this, I was not familiar with the writer-director's work before. It does make me want to go back and at least maybe watch Stranger by the Lake, because it sounds like this film is quite tame, but I do think what it covers as far as just with loneliness and faith, but also just trying to find where you belong. We don't really know a whole lot about Jeremy and where he's come from. We just know that he's back, and clearly there's relationships that were formed and that must have been left in some kind of limbo from the mentor who has brought him back for his mentor's funeral, and his son. There's also a neighbor that he kind of gets involved with and is quite uncomfortable. But there is this deep sadness about Jeremy that I think Felix really embodies as he's doing these things that clearly you don't have to agree with, but there's something bubbling underneath. There's something there, and in some scenes it's very subtle, and then there's in other scenes where clearly it's just pouring out. So this is a very different kind of film. I don't think this is going to be for everybody, but I was intrigued throughout. The pacing again sort of kind of has this disconnect, and then we kind of get pulled back in a little bit, and then some things just are kind of off-putting. You don't really know how well it serves the overall story and the message and the themes that let me make sure I say this right, since I've nailed it every time. Girardi wants to convey. But I'm giving it a VixFlix rating of 3 out of 5. And coming up next, Cate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender married, and oh, so attractive. Oh. Black Bag is a gripping spy drama about legendary intelligence agents George Woodhouse and his beloved wife Catherine. When she is suspected of betraying the nation, George faces the ultimate test: loyalty to his marriage or his country. That was per Rotten Tomatoes. And this is Steven Soderbergh's Black Bag, and this is per IndieWire. Never satisfied with convention, director Steven Soderbergh saw his latest feature, Black Bag, as an opportunity to not only deconstruct the spy genre, but also challenge preconceived notions around marriage. The film stars Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett as a married intelligence agents forced to reassess their loyalties to one another. A noted cinephile, Soderbergh recently shared during an interview with Variety that he and screenwriter David Coop took inspiration from a classic source. David and I talked about what it'd be like if George and Martha were spies. We wanted to make an espionage version of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. If you're not familiar with Virginia Woolf, that is a 1962 play by Edward Albee, and that was later adapted into a 1966 film that explores the complexities and dysfunction of a marriage through a late-night confrontation between George and Martha, a middle-aged couple, and a younger couple, Nick and Honey. The film was famously adapted, and it was done by Mike Nichols, and it starred the real-life husband and wife, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Soderbergh is a huge fan of the film and was a close associate of Nichols before he passed away in 2014. So Black Bag marks Soderbergh and writer David Coop's second film of this year. Presence was their first that came out in January. Black Bag is a sexy, stylish, smart, and sleek espionage thriller with fantastic performances that are, of course, led by the illuminating Blanchett and Fassbender. This is not your 007 action-packed spy flick, but rather a sharp, sophisticated psychological warfare that may be dialogue-heavy, yet remains enthralling and exciting. It's tightly wound that uses this genre to spectacularly push the boundaries of trust and devotion within a marriage who both are in the business of being professional liars, not to mention highly qualified experts in keeping and retrieving secrets. It is a clever, captivating chess match enclosed in desire, seduction, and deception. This is via today's show. This kind of explains the title, and it's also, obviously it's said in the film, but for those who need a spy lingo refresh, black bag is a term used to convey that an operation or a piece of information is top secret and the speaker cannot say more. It comes from the tradition of spies putting their documents into a black bag, and once that black bag is locked, no one can know what's in it. That was from Cate Blanchett on the Today Show. So in order for their marriage to function, this is Blanchett, when they go on separate operations, when they ask one another details, they say, sorry, black bag. Let's talk about why Black Bag is a pretty cool movie and what I believe to be one of Soderbergh's very best. Snazzy costumes. Everybody is looking sharp, styling and profiling, as Ric Flair would say. There's marvelous production design from the houses, especially George and Catherine's house, to kind of each location of it and the way things are decked out throughout the film. A lot of it is very eye-catching, and it looks fabulous. The score, the spellbinding score, really adds to this kind of, not only kind of the flow of the film, but the flow of the characters. There seems to always be a back and forth, never knowing what's true and what's not. You know someone's lying, and the score is just amping it up. And as the tension begins to build and build through this quick 90 minutes. There are I guess technically three, even though two of them are in the same location. But there's a dinner scene at the beginning of the film and at the end of the film. And there's also this polygraph sequence as well. And it's first-rate filmmaking, first-rate acting, and it has you on the edge of your seat with every question that's asked, with every answer that's given. The way the Soderbergh goes in and edits this thing, not shooting it, capturing it is brilliant, but the edit of it, especially the polygraph sequence with all of its different kind of characters where someone is guilty of being a traitor. It was sensational. Before I get into performances, I will have you know, there were things that I really liked about this, and then afterwards I kind of read a couple things. I started working on this review for this podcast, and I rarely ever go see a movie twice, but I ended up going to see Black Bag twice, and there are things that even early on within the first conversation, even before the first dinner scene, or actually it's right after the first dinner scene, there's so much that I didn't even realize that they were talking about what is soon to come. And there's a lot of references and things. And it's, like I said, the whole thing is is very clever. And the fact that Soderbergh is able to keep all of these different things, like I said, the production design, the score, the way he's telling the story, those performances, the way he's juggling all of these and keeping it to a tight 90 minutes, he's one of the best. So George and Catherine, they're seen as kind of the gold standard couple in the eyes of their friends and coworkers because they seem to have figured it all out, which is quite the accomplishment considering their line of work. Fassbender is, as George, he's cool, he's calm, he's very calculated. I've saw a lot of comparisons, which I know I wasn't a huge fan of the movie, but it does remind me of the character he plays in David Fincher's The Killer. He's inhuman-like and is constantly observing, but there is sort of this tiny thought that of his wife being a traitor. And you see how it affects his psyche because, as someone once said, what's love got to do with it? Everything, actually. Everything. As far as Blanchett being Catherine, she's alluring and mysterious in her own right. She's equally as charming as her husband counterpart, but there's a lingering question that surrounds her character, and it's that, is she capable of backstabbing and betraying her hubby? And that's sort of what really kind of gets this thing spinning. And they each tell each other, hey, I would never lie to you. And then Catherine always says, only if I had to. And that kind of throws in where, that's where Black Bag comes into play. And so they're kind of back and forth, and it's really, really, it's interesting to see them play off of that. And the fact that they're both damn good at what they do only makes things more tricky, I guess we could say. Tom Burke, you probably don't know his name, but you've definitely seen him in other stuff. He's sensational as the group's kind of dirty, rotten scoundrel. Sex, lies, and drugs. He's unapologetic about who he is. I mean, he's comfortable in his own skin. And he does feel like he's always up to no good. And then Marissa Bella plays his girlfriend. I was not familiar with her work before, but I really enjoyed her role in this. Her scenes are some of the best in the entire film, especially in the first dinner scene. And then she shares a pretty tense moment with Fassbender when they're having to redirect the satellite. That's good. I'm probably not going to say this right, but Regé-Jean Page from Bridgerton, also in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and Naomi Harris, they make some memorable moves with their characters. Naomi Harris has a good one-on-one with Cate Blanchett, but Pierce Brosnan is also in it. Kind of plays the head honcho of their secret spy company. I forgot what it was called. It was National, like NEC something. Because do keep in mind, all of these people that are on this list for George to find out who's the traitor, including his wife, all work at the same place. But Pierce Brosnan is barely in it, and I wish there was more for him to do because he fits right in. I don't know if it's because he used to be Bond. I don't know, but he fits right in. But he really doesn't. He doesn't get much, and I think that was kind of a bummer. Soderbergh is with Black Bag. He's never better with his fast-paced, first-class storytelling. Director, cinematographer, editor. He can do it all. And a phenomenal cast where everyone is hiding something and trying to pull that out because it can only be left up to one man, and that's George. The chemistry between Fassbender and Blanchett is electric. They provide British spy excitement and marriage fidelity at its finest. Relationships are a fragile thing, but at the end of the day, would you kill for the one you love? If so, then it must be true love, and it certainly is for George and Catherine. I am giving Black Box a solid 4 out of 5 stars. It's one of the best of the year, and it's one of Soderbergh's best as well. And we are going to end things with a good old-fashioned small-town baseball game. Batter up! The movie is called Eephus. Let's get to what it's about first. Per Rotten Tomatoes, as an imminent construction project looms over their beloved small-town baseball field, a pair of New England Sunday League teams face off for the last time over the course of a day. Tensions flare up and ceremonial laughs are shared as an era of camaraderie and escapism fades into an uncertain future. Just so in case you didn't know, because I did not, Eephus is actually a pitch in baseball that is a very high arcing, off-speed pitch. The delivery from the pitcher has very low velocity and often catches the hitter off guard. The Eephus pitch is thrown overhand like most pitches, but is characterized by an unusual high arcing trajectory. And also, Eephus is filed under a subgenre that I personally was not really aware of, just called the Hangout movie. This is per IndieWire. It says, why Eephus is the perfect hangout film. There's never been a book written about the subgenre of the so-called hangout film. In fact, the earliest reference I've come across of the term was Quentin Tarantino describing his admiration for Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo and Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused. Tarantino defined the subgenre as being movies that you hang out with the characters so much that they actually become your friends. When director Carson Lund was on the Filmmaker Toolkit podcast, he talked about setting out to make a hangout film with Eephus. The Hangout movie, he says, is a film that prioritizes character interaction at the expense of forward plot momentum. It's more about just enjoying as a viewer, spending time with these people. Howard Hawks is the master of this. They didn't call them hangout films then, but I think of something like Hatari as definitely a hangout film where the situation is really just an excuse to spend time with these people. Let me tell you, I didn't know about the subgenre, but I can tell you that it is definitely a hangout movie. Co-written and directed by Lund, this good-natured, nostalgic, and bittersweet outing is absolutely about for the love of the game, but it also endearingly explores the passage of time and how all good things must come to an end. The cast is wonderful, with such an eclectic group of actors getting the chance to have their character go up to the plate and take a swing. I'm happy to say no one strikes out. Its leisurely pace feels comforting, while the film itself slowly and softly gets more moving. Outsiders would see this ball game as minuscule, yet we know for these players it's monumental, and they would play forever if they could. I have to share because I thought this was a nice little way to explain the movie. It was this was tweeted by John Maffio. It's Mathman Jones. This was on Twitter. He says, I'd like to pitch this to everyone as imagine an alternate Sandlot where the kids never left town, but they started a local league and added Uncut Gems actors to the roster. So I really I enjoyed that one. Eephus is a hangout movie about a hangout sport, and it just makes too much sense. And Lund used his own experience playing America's favorite pastime to capture Eephus' spirit of doing something because you simply enjoy doing it, and the fellowship that's formed out of that with others that are doing the same. This is actually from the same IndieWire piece. Lund says, baseball is a hangout sport. At the professional level, there's 162 games a season. You don't need to win every game. It's a game that has a lot of downtime. What people see is boredom. I think when you play it, it's filled with anticipation and also just filled with camaraderie when you're in the dugout. There's a lot going on, even if the game itself is not very tense. I set out to make something that would capture my own feelings playing the game, like the actual experience of being a player on the field and feeling that. It says Lund stopped playing high school ball growing up in New England, having become fed up with the pressure and weight room training, which drained the fun from the sport. But when he picked it up again as an adult, he joined a rec league after moving to LA, rediscovered what he loved about the game, as well as inspiration for him to make his own hangout movie, which is Eephus. he goes on to say the league is made up of those people that didn't make it, that didn't get to the next level. So actually the pressure's off, and it's really more about that camaraderie and just having that sort of like refuge once a week to go play a thing you love that reminds you of childhood. And that's what I kind of thought of as kind of the, which is why I kind of like that perspective about the Sandlot of like, you love it as a kid, you kind of think about it. I think it's always kind of associated with childhood. I played as a kid, so I kind of got that feeling as well. Eephus is quite funny. There is a scene that is dealing with a runner asking for a third base coach, and it was hilarious. There's little things throughout. I mean, some of it's very subtle. That one was kind of more of, I think, kind of more in your face funny, but I could so see that happening in these adult sports leagues. I also really enjoyed the small town vibes of it. Obviously, it's in New England, and they even make reference where when they don't have this ball field, they have to go to another town, and that's 2 towns over, and that takes forever. And you can just kind of tell everybody knows everybody, and there's people that just show up just to watch. One player, actually, his family does come to watch him. No one else does, and they make a comment about that in the movie. There's also just this old man who I guess just likes to watch him. And there's 2 teens getting high that's also watching. So you kind of get this feeling that I don't think there's a whole lot going on in this town. And so I don't know if I really blame any of them for at least trying to pass some time of playing baseball, and especially as much as they love it, even if they're too old to actually play it anymore. In one scene, there are 2 kids that are watching, and the little girl is up in kind of where the scorekeeper's box is, and she asks, why is this so important to them? And I think she's asking what most people off the field are thinking. But I think any person that, is passionate about something, and especially about playing a sport and not wanting to give it up, I think the people asking why is this so important to them are the same ones that don't really get the passion that's involved, and that it is more than just a game to them. There is a character, which actually there's a little dedication to him as he passed away after this filming, but the character, his name is Franny, and he is basically their scorekeeper, keeping up with who's on base. And I think the movie starts with him coming into the ballpark, it ends with him leaving the ballpark. First of all, I think it's just about kind of his dedication and kind of how serious he's taking it, even though he is not one of the players. But he represents a fan of the game and the joy of being a fan of the game and coming out and watching it and being a part of it. It's almost the same reason why if you like the Titans, or you like, you want to go see the Braves, like there is excitement in just being in the stands and being a part of that atmosphere that is thrilling, even if you can't play on the field. Now, this version with Franny, he's like one of maybe 5 people that are watching, and I'm including those 2 kids who are getting high, who don't even know the rules of baseball. And then on the opposite side, there's the umpires of it, who you can tell are just kind of coming out here to do it, and I don't know if they're getting paid or not, but as soon as it gets to a certain time, they're ready to go home. It's over. They don't, if the game is, no matter whose turn it is, no matter what inning, they're out of here. So clearly they could care less about what's going on. This is not the type of baseball movie that comes down to the final pitch, or it's bases loaded, and like The Natural, there's a home run coming and it's gonna bust those lights up. This is not one of those baseball movies. In case you can't tell, Eephus is this. It's almost like this laid back, and it's like we said at the beginning. You're really just kind of hanging out with them, and I will say, it ends just like it should. Take that for how you will, but the game ends exactly the way it should. I thought it was a perfect end to the game, because honestly, at a certain point, you don't really know how this final game at this park is going to wrap up. I enjoyed this one quite a bit. It's really just kind of the feel and the emotion of, like I said, whether it's connected to childhood, or if like the director, you're in a sports, adult league. There's that love of the game, no matter what sport it is, and how tough it is to give it up. And these guys aren't doing it for money or fame. It's not about that at all. But it's also this, it is this escape. It's this other outlet that they can use. And all of them are aware that they are falling apart physically. But there's something about it, and it's the love and the adoration for the game that keeps calling them back. And the fact that all of this is coming to an end because the ballpark is being torn down, there's an added element there that I definitely think plays into how these guys are feeling and how they're kind of seeing not just the baseball, but their life going and the time that has passed. Eephus is getting a VixFlix rating of 3.5 out of 5. It's a very sneaky baseball movie that really does have meaning in the things that I think will resonate with anybody, whether you're a baseball fan or not. And that's it. That is another volume of these Cinema Chronicles done and ready. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Seek out these films. If any of these sounded interesting to you, go seek them out. Eephus is playing at the Bell Court right now, so I think that's a good start. Don't forget to check out all of our work, NashvilleMovieDispatch.substack.com, Nashville Movie Dispatch, wherever you get and listen to your podcasts. And hey, let's do this again next month, shall we? Until then, remember, just go see a damn movie. Ow.